Welcome to Authentic Living with Roxanne, a place where we have conscious conversations about things that really matter in our lives. And now here's your host, Roxanne Derhaj.
Hi everyone, it's Roxanne Derhaj of Authentic Living with Roxanne. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Today I have a special, I would say friend now, a colleague that I share a writing group with, and this is Loubna Noureddin. Am I saying that last name properly?
Noureddin.
So Loubna is in a very warm place, so I'm jealous. I should tell you, she's in Florida, and that's where she resides presently. So I tell you a little bit about her. She has quite extensive background in organizational leadership. She's a CEO of Mind Market Consulting, and she has extensive experience working with teams and groups, from boards to C-suite executives and their teams. She brings global experience in healthcare, higher education, and government. She holds a doctorate in organizational leadership with an emphasis on culture change, and she's faculty presently at Barry University in the Human Resources Department program, and is the past president of the ICF Federation in South Florida. And she has, her dream, which I think is phenomenal. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about it, is to support 100 orphans from West Africa through college and career transitions. What an amazing goal to have, Loubna.
Thank you. I was born in Sierra Leone, West Africa. And I've seen the poverty. Actually, Sierra Leone right now is the poorest country in the world, according to the latest from United Nations. So I do have a dream. I'm helping out right now. We're very close, and it's now through informal circles. It has not been formal, but my goal is to use any profit from within my company toward that goal. I've been there. I've lived in Sierra Leone, I've lived in Nigeria, and I've lived in Lebanon as well. So there's an attachment to West Africa that is very special to me.
So tell us about your story. I know a little bit, but I think it's a fascinating story, and I'd love for you to share it with my listeners about your beginnings and what puts you now in Florida doing what you're doing. So start wherever you'd like.
All right. So, I know a thing or two about change, Roxanne. We talked about change and the pandemic, and people who have been through hardships have a better way of being adaptable to what's happening today. So we notice a lot of struggle around the world because of this huge change. But to us, people who've been through change themselves, we feel more resilient about it. So at the age of 10, I woke to the hot end of a rifle pressed on my forehead. I was then in Sierra Leone. Unwelcome visitors do show up in our lives, at our doorsteps. But in my case, it was rebels from neighboring countries. And they were coming in to get anything they could get their hand on. But we were lucky. My family and I managed to flee into the darkness of a nearby jungle. And the life we had, along with my childhood teddy bear, were left behind. And change can come to any of us at any time. And our agenda rarely has concerns for what you hold dear. The horrific walk we had, it was also magical in a way, because sometimes what is not so great brings up things that are super great. So we were found by a tribe of known cannibals as we flee through the jungle, and I'm not kidding. And one younger tribesman took it upon himself to save us and took us through wilderness and a map only he knows, because there was no way a modern person would survive the map that we went through. And I watched him blow dust on animals that were too scary to even fathom in that journey. So I do believe in magic. And for those of you who are not comfortable with the word magic, it's that phenomena of hope that comes with extraordinary outcomes. When you're in a doom situation, just like we are today, there has been so many magical moments, so many opportunities for people through a very doomed situation. And this was only my first war, Roxanne. So because my second was in Lebanon during most of my school years and my college year. And there was a time when it became too dangerous for us to survive because school happened and university happened while bombs in neighboring streets was happening. So it's interesting that we humans are very adaptable. And what matters for me today is being aware that taking the pause to recognize what we are adapting to or not, right? So we're super adaptable. This pandemic will pass. And from Lebanon, I came in as a refugee to Canada. So I was in Montreal and I felt home in Montreal. As a refugee there, I have such a soft spot for any refugee out there. It is not easy, transformation not easy, but thanks to the Canadians and the beautiful and lovely setup they have for refugees, I was able to make it. And I moved to Florida because of my husband's job. And we've been here for a while. So that's my story and I stick to it.
So tell me, like, how old were you when you were going through this walk? Like, how old were you?
I was 10 years old in the jungle. I still remember it very vividly. I often talk to my dad about it to just remember some details. And it has been an interesting past. It's still there. The memory still is there vividly as we move through this because it was just fascinating what we went through. The bites of mosquitoes that were beyond compare because it was in every part of your body for days to come. You know, the illness, the stomach aches, having to drink water from, not so clean ponds. And it's been there for a while. So at 10 years, it was in Sierra Leone. And then around 13 in Lebanon.
So what did you learn about resilience? I mean, for a 10-year-old, that's a big experience. You're with your family. Your walk is how long at that point?
We had 3 days of
5 days. 5 days. 3 days. Okay.
3 days, and I think the one lesson for me that I truly take and still hold on to is the amazing resilience of people like us. Mm-hmm. What we went through was unimaginable, and yet we had people in the way that unexpectedly supported us and helped us survive. It was the little stuff that made it so incredible. And in a way, Roxanne, it looks very much like what we see in organizations today. As drastic as that is, you get new leadership come in, changing everything, taking away everything that you hold dear, right? And then expecting you to just adapt immediately to change. So, I always go back to that first war because everything changed. Anything that I felt was familiar was not. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a lot of that happening, even though it's not war and it's not as drastic. We do see and hear many stories of people that feel that they're completely lost any type of stability, right? And even grounding of who they are. Their identity is their work. Mm-hmm. Their whole life and identity is based on that title that they have at work. And it's pretty difficult to survive. I can't compare to what we went through because my parents lost everything. I was crying over my teddy bear, not recognizing years later that my parents lost everything they had, lost years and years of work and livelihood. And yet I see this happening because even through those difficult times, there was sparks of hope along the way that helped us survive. My parents are still both alive and well.
Wow.
And they're doing great. And we've been through that hardship, but we survived it. And I do believe this pandemic is here, not for long, and we're going to survive it just like everything else. Hang in there is what I tell my clients. Hang in there. This is a passing journey. and the only way out is within.
Absolutely. And I think that's, that whole concept of people being defined by what they do. I am, an executive, I'm a lawyer, I'm a teacher, whatever. When you don't have other things in your life, and I'm going to say your alignment's off balance because we do spend so much time at work. And you're right, the pandemic, the adversity of the pandemic has, yes, it's made all of us have to realign and redefine so many things in our life. And even more so for people that I coach, and I know you do it as well, where people are struggling with how much, power they gave to their position, and now they're recognizing that they are so much more than what they do.
Roxanne, because with my clients, that self-awareness is so not present. And even though I'm, for example, help someone solve problems or this cultural issue or this team issue, I find myself working with them on the basic of who are you? What is your identity? And how come that identity is so attached to a job title or that promotion that you did not get? I see a lot of pain in that lack of balance. And it has to do a lot with authentic leadership. Who am I as a leader? How self-aware I am of my values and my purpose, and how can I bring that and be more intentional and more deliberate about grounding myself in who I am? And again and again, and I'm not sure if it's the pandemic or before, I see it more now that executives are working harder, longer hours, trying to do more with less, and yet losing sight of their own mental health, of their own physical health, and of the triggers and the lack of creativity that is happening because of lack of sleep, lack of rest, lack of physical activity, and being controlled by their email instead of them controlling the email. So it's like the email is controlling them. And I find this so consistent lately that most of my clients' issues are not what they believe to be the trigger of the call for the coaching. It's more the lack of grounding in what are you. I've seen, toxic leaders in the most noble organizations, and it's lack again to that self-awareness and lack of understanding of how your effectiveness as a leader actually affects organizational culture, affects the results that your team gets. So it's like the hamster on the squeaky wheel, the wheel with the
Yes,
hamster.
for sure. But I think a lot of these leaders, when they go to business schools, let's say, in all fairness, like I think authentic, I talk about authentic heart leadership, where we talk about awareness and what's my story? Like, why did I want to become a leader to begin with? I think these lessons now are becoming more normative versus years ago was very, leadership was very, top down. Our senior leadership teams were not about awareness and values, and how are my values in line with my vision and my mission, and how is that translating out into palpable little steps. But here we are, where now more than ever, the workplaces, people are saying, I don't want to deal with this company because they're not living their values. I don't, it's out of alignment. I'm going to go and shop at the local stores because I want to be able to be connected in a way. Whereas maybe a year ago, we wouldn't have thought about it. We would have thought, what's the best deal for me? I'm going to send for it somewhere far away, not really thinking about, I need to be connected to the company that I'm doing business with. Do you find that there's been a lot of shift with the trust level that the consumer is having from what executives are seeing in reference to, their interaction with the public?
What I see, Roxanne, is the idea of psychological safety within the organization. I see a lot of lost trust from that end. Am I safe in my work? Will I have that job 6 months from today? Is the change, am I doing enough? Am I capable of doing? And this inner belief that they can't keep up. So it's like, I can't keep up. So I see a lot of burnout. and a lot of psychological safety influencing how they look at their organization and other organizations. And we go back to a very business theory that that you and I probably know without even thinking about it. What's the end? What's the end that is in mind? What's that goal? How do I measure where I'm going? And as long as you're stuck in this loop of work, 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 and not stopping to understand where's the root cause of my issue, then you are having less awareness about self and less awareness about others. So it goes back to something as simple as, for me, Roxanne, as silence that inner critic. What is happening here? Are you able to stop, just to stop and pause and be mindful of where you are, during the day? So at least just basic stop and pause. What am I doing? What am I thinking? What's happening right now? Okay, what is this inner critic telling me? I hear you. What are the facts? I see very capable leaders, very capable, well-established leaders questioning their ability to manage. And it goes back to that self-awareness and tapping into the thoughts that's coming in because of this pandemic and because of the stress and the lack of balance between, what's in here, what's in my life, that is causing them to have self-doubt. Very capable leaders. And it seems to be recurring more and more in this time, probably because we're not going out, we're not doing things that are entertaining. I'm not sure, maybe it's connecting. But resilience to me at this time of change is to really focus on my thoughts, on my strength, and be able to be grounded in my abilities and nurture who I am first, so I'm more capable of being successful to the world. And if we could just silence that inner critic and really focus on facts, go back to facts. What have I accomplished this year? What have I done well? And what can I hone in through my strength? That might help you silence that inner critic and work more on being more present, right?
So I think what's happening, and I see it around, a lot of the people that I'm coaching, or even just, other people that are in corporate positions, people are at such a depletion level that what you're referring to, Loubna, absolutely makes sense. But if I'm coming to a space of, I'm so depleted that I can't make the connections between the fact that, I've been, extending my days, or I haven't been playing with my children as much, or I haven't, felt the sun on my face, for 12, 14 hours a day for the last 3 days, or I haven't sat down and really actually ate with my family, or, had a walk with a friend. All these basic things. What happens is I think a lot of leaders or people that I'm coaching are so disconnected. So that whole thought, when I'm teaching them about awareness and problem solving, they're so not able to see the frame of objectivity because they're so stuck in their subjective reality based on so many things that got them to the spot that they're in. I don't know if you're also seeing that.
Absolutely. And that brings my mind to the middleman, manager of managers. They're expected to be excited, willing, unconditionally supportive of whatever their boss is telling them, welcoming of any change with little disregard to what could be conflicting priorities in their life. And at the same time, they're supposed to be, at their best with their own employees, with their own managers and managers of teams, and walking that very fine line of interpersonal relationships and yet commanding. So it's a very conflicting side of personality where you need to be stretched in 2, 3, 4 different ways. And your behavior needs to accommodate whether you're working with the top or you're working with the bottom line. And these people are burnt out and have a really difficult place in their life right now to navigate because they have to switch from being, accommodating to being more assertive. And when they're dealing with their managers, showing up as engaged and they're not. So there's a lot of masks and playing with who they are, which creates that question mark for them. Am I capable? Am I the right person? Am I doing the right things? Will I be in this job in a few months from today? They have that look about them. And Roxanne, I get in my coaching calls with these people, I get a thank you because they finally have a time to pause, to reflect, to think out loud with no judgment, right? And no retaliation. And just the fact that they're able to think and pause makes me realize that they're in that calendar. Go back to that calendar. If anyone is listening to this, look at your calendar. How much of time have you truly spent on doing your job? Which, as a leader, you're in your strategic planning, you're thinking ahead. Are you death by Zoom? Is there Zoom
Death
after
by
Zoom
Zoom.
after Zoom call?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
in that case, when are you doing your job? Because your job is way beyond entertaining meeting after meeting. Finding yourself in that position of grounding, that this is what I'm intended to do, and this is how I do it, and stopping this feeling of I'm overwhelmed with work because I have no time. I'm on Zoom meetings all day long. What is it that you can do differently to be more in control of your time and more in control and capable of doing what you're supposed to do? I think there's a lot of question there because of that fear. And to your point, Roxanne, if you're in that lack of power mode, right? And then you're missing out on what's motivating me. Where am I being capable and where I'm not? And there's this lack of boundaries between family and work, right? And no time for me. And believe me, time for you is what will make you a more effective leader at work. So how do we try to start to separate who I am and my capabilities and my strength from these meeting after meeting at work, right? So
Absolutely. And, I was just on another podcast and we were talking a lot about fatigue. And in fact, the attention that we need to give, like, you're seeing half of me and hopefully I'm articulating enough that you can read my nonverbals, but some people are kind of flat. So you have to even work harder to kind of get what is the nuance that I'm missing. So, versus like we were talking a little bit about the element of the water cooler, right? Like we used to always say, there's a level of connection that comes from just being able to have that face-to-face connection that's being lost. And then we're going, like to your point, we're going from Zoom thing to Zoom to that kind of time. And with my new book, I talk a lot about is if you're not able to be aware of what it is that you need to be healthy and to keep your mind objectively clear, how is that impacting your ability to foster creativity in the space that you're in? If you're depleted, you're constantly you're you're right, at a hamster on that wheel, and you're really depleting yourself. You're probably getting less than 65% productivity because you're so tired mentally, emotionally, probably physically as well. But again, that whole concept of people being in that fear state that I'm going to lose my position. What's happening with the pandemic? Look, I was speaking to a colleague in career management, and he was saying that there was another big onslaught of executives losing their job in Toronto, like something to the tune of, I forget the number, but it was quite high. So the reality is people are scared.
absolutely. And you bring up a really good point, is that focus on what we do not control, right? So that fear of the outcome that we have absolutely no control over, and instead going into a more of an empowered position where, okay, what do I have under my control? How can I show up as indispensable? What is it that I need to do today? And is it truly about my title that makes me an effective leader? And in this case, loss is, we can't prevent that. That's beyond. But as you're in it and you're with it and working in this environment where it's, highly demanding, highly flexible, going through competitive change consistently, right? And competing with a virus that we have not been able to control, is how do I become more self-aware and more aware of what is happening around me, and how can I become indispensable? What is the one thing that my organization needs today that I could substitute and assist with? And it's not Zoom calls, right? We're wired to connect. We are hardwired to connect with others. how can I use my day to be more effective in my connections with others? How can I create that one-on-one, right? That one-on-one connection, because it's no longer face-to-face. It's, me and you, how can I make this more meaningful?
Right, right.
And when it comes to the executives, how can I show up as an executive? What is in my presence that is saying or not, that I'm saying or not saying? Am I showing up fully ready? Am I showing up with a voice? Do I have meaningful saying to say, something to say? I work with a highly capable EVP, executive vice president of a large scientific organization, Roxanne. And she told me that she wanted a coach because she cannot be heard. She does not feel heard in the meetings. Well, if that's what you tell yourself on a daily basis, you start to shut down completely and you wait for the louder voices to take over. Well, how do we create that presence? And make sure you say what you need to say at the time it needs to say. Most people that do not speak up, it's not because there's another person taking over. It's because there's a voice here that says, is my idea good enough to share, while the other person is thinking out loud and throwing that idea. So go back to identifying your own limiting beliefs, right? And the triggers. What are the triggers that I have within me that seem to be causing me to go quiet or go too loud? And go back to executive presence. What does that mean? Am I dressed up for success? Am I looking like I'm hiding behind a camera, right? With my face all the way versus am I really present, listening? Is my mind in this call, or I'm working on something else in my head? Because it all shows up for you when you are dealing, in your role.
And mentally, when you're tired, what you're not able to do is to be completely present. And I think, with awareness, and awareness is, could be something as simple as, I'm going to take every ding and bell off, and I'm going to, sit in my office, in my favorite chair and have a tea for 10 minutes with nothing to, kind of allow my brain and my mind to just have a bit of a, like you said, a bit of a pause.
Yes.
Or to sit outside because it's sunny and feel the sun on my face with that tea, be able to reposition myself. My body then identifies something different with the stress. So my body feels like it has another option instead of sitting on my desk for, like you said, for say 10, 12 hours sometimes. I'm sure people do that, which is unfortunate. Yeah. So the body needs that experience to say, oh, well, what can I do? Oh, you can do this. You can walk around the block because you've got, 15 minutes, something as simple as that. Then, that whole internal space gets created that says, when I am not feeling 100%, these are the 6 options that I can pick from, versus kind of sitting there and thinking, oh, I'm just going to, keep at it. If I keep at it, and we know that we only have obviously that optimal functioning, for 20 minutes at a time, then we need to take a break and then go on to other things.
Absolutely. And life is too short, right? I mean, if you've been through one experience or two, I've been through 2 wars. Life is short. So do what it takes to first navigate your personal health and personal being and presence. And I often ask my clients, why take an hour to have a meeting? Why not 45 minutes and then allow everyone to take a breather for 15, right? In positive intelligence science, it's the 5 minutes of being mindful. And I do this to be mindful. Very simple things, what is one thing you could do? It could be visual, looking at the window. I have a beautiful window in front of me with a lot of, maybe that would be it. Just looking and noticing, different things, the wind, whatever that is that keeps you grounded for that moment. Few minutes, it doesn't take much. In meetings, I could do this under the desk and just have that sense of mindful presence, or it could be through ear, listening to sounds that you hear for the first time or as farther as you can hear. So bring back that type of presence to yourself, because then you become better at creating more meaningful collections and having that in-depth conversation with someone else who's looking at you and you're not present. We can tell when you're not present. We can tell when the leader is going fast forward to results, just get me to results. And I would say that, through coaching, Roxanne, I offer evidence-based assessments and leadership metrics that help the leader sees where they're at and where they need to be based on their own self-assessment. So it's not someone else telling them, right? So they can't say, oh no, this person doesn't know me well. It's you. So the self-assessment tells you where that challenge is for you. Is it in the vision? Is it in the detail? Or is it in presence or mindfulness? So to me, it's go back to basics. What is it? What am I here to do? What is my true role? And where am I here to do in my life, right? Because that identity cannot be just your work identity. Who am I? How am I going to keep myself healthy so I can be more effective at work?
With my new book, that's what I do with the teams that I'll be working with, is that the team members actually analyze the leaders' competencies around things like awareness, decision-making, recognition, all those different variables. And, so that it becomes almost like let's say I'm on your team and I'm really very poor at awareness. I go through, training and the modules and coaching. And if I get through that and I'm still lacking in awareness, it shows that there's some things that I need to further work on as a leader. Because I think, unfortunately, where are we getting these metrics to see whether the leader is being effective or not? So my hopes is that with these ability to continually test once we've created these trainings, along with whether it's executive coaching, that the leader would then go, oh, I've learned these things, but what's the application? Well, how did I apply it in my meetings this week? Or, with my presentations, was I able to demonstrate a certain skill that I've learned, or those? And then the team again then continues to assess the qualities of the leader to see if that's been enhanced, or in fact, if it's gotten worse, if it's stayed the same, then at that point there would be more in-depth need for further kind of deeper core coaching with the leader.
Absolutely. If we look back at 30 years from today, coaching was associated with a rare occurrence, and when you're in trouble, you got to coach, because it was do better or get out. Today, engagement with coaching is simply an opportunity to grow and leverage your talents and become more effective. And it's an expectation. So I see more and more people actually, when they're getting their job for the first time, getting a promotion, asking for that coach to be part of their competitive advantage. So I think find a way to connect with people that can mentor you or that can assist you, right? So I was having some sleep issues. I connected with a sleep coach. It does not have to be a $1 million investment. It could be 2 sessions with a sleep coach and learning that if I could sleep at the same time every day, and if I could have a sleep routine, things will be better. So find out where you're struggling, that specific place where you're struggling, pause, allow yourself to stop and reach out to someone who can support you so you become more effective. I think I have found more precisely, Roxanne, with female leaders, that they do not stop to ask for help, and they do not reach out to ask for a coach or look for development opportunities. Even networking opportunities do not happen for them as specifically as they believe they are doing it. So they're not very effective in networking on a level of growing their own brand as a leader. So I think it's important to stop, become more self-aware, understand where your challenges are, reflect on those challenges, and then reach out and get help. Find the coach or the mentor or the manager or the peer that's going to support you because they know what they're doing. Not because they've been there, but they know what they are doing and can provide you with good feedback to help you grow. But I would always say start with self-awareness, right? Because that helps me then understand awareness with others. How am I communicating? Am I truly listening? And then as you get that and you become better at that because your inner critic is silenced, then I can start looking at my relationships and how am I, how is my awareness of others? How can I see others as clearly as I see myself? And that takes the time to pause and to be there, right? And understand your limiting beliefs. So I know one client, I'll give you an example, Roxanne. Incredible client, incredible female leader, has an amazing team of people, and they were all complaining about her and her leadership. And they can quit because they're in healthcare. Everyone wants them. So they were a high potential team that she did not want to risk losing. And when I spoke with them, I was so surprised to realize that she has forced weekly meetings with them as a group. And in the meeting, they had to present a report that was so ridiculously detailed and overwhelming that they had spent most of the week working on that report.
Oh, my goodness.
So her intentions were, the most noble intentions was she wanted her superiors to understand that this group is working hard and this way they could not be shut down or furloughed. Great intention. The impact on the team was the opposite. They felt micromanaged. They felt extremely burnt out. They had a culture that they felt was a controlling culture, and she became the enemy. So just by her stopping and recognizing, I said, just pause for a moment. Look at your report. What are you doing, right? Just that pause, understanding the impact. Did you ask these people what they thought about it? Did you even in any way find out what would be a better way to report? And none of that happened because in her rush and the stress and the worry that the whole team might be let go, very good intentions, she's trying to protect the team, she became the enemy for the team and she became the least effective for the team. So being self-aware will help you become more aware of others.
Well, I think, I often say, if you don't know what your own stress signature is and you're in that state and you're working from, the, fight, flight or freeze part of your brain often, then you're not becoming clear about what's really happening in front of you because you're in your own world, right? You're tumbling and, it's unfortunate. I often say, how do you know when you're stressed? What are some of the signs? How do you talk to yourself? How do you experience your body? Because oftentimes, when I talk to people about, tell me, there's a term in neuroscience called window of tolerance. I'm sure you've probably heard of that. And I'll say to people, how do you know when you're tipping in? And they go, what's it like to be in it at all? And I'm like, are you kidding? And they go, well, no, generally, if I am really stressed, I've recognized that I'm not recognizing it because I've just snapped at my kids yet again, or, I can barely move my shoulders. I said, well, that's too late stage at that point. What you're not recognizing, you probably had 7 cues prior to that, and you just kept going into the no-fly zone, and then you're about to tumble over. So I think you're so correct in saying, what is my internal space? And nobody can care for our internal space.
Yes.
Those lessons for ourselves, and not everybody's like us.
Absolutely. And if I continue saying I'm overwhelmed, believe me, if you repeat that for 30 times, you'll start to feel that sense of overwhelm. So it is overwhelming, absolutely. And you know what, Roxanne, let's face it, leaders face obstacles no matter where they are in their journey. Okay, so with COVID, it's probably worse, right? And you're facing, these areas of surprises and changes that are hitting you left and right. So it is not an easy journey. And at the same time, you're stuck in this social hierarchy, that requires you to be extremely aware and adapting to different teams and different powers. So it's a roller coaster. You're navigating a lot during the day. So mentally, it's exhausting. We get that. And the more reason why it's important to pause and to really go back to what is my intention for today? What is that one thing that is really important to me to do today? And how can I take the time to do it? Because we cannot be in that roller coaster up and down, up and down, up and down, because that navigation of power becomes very ruffled and unclear. The path becomes super unclear. So tending to your expectations first, and then tending to your manager's expectations and the expectations of your team takes a second when you are clear on what you want. So, Roxanne, we've seen more of, like you said, the burnout, the fatigue, the constant demand, all together can create a true explosion, and something you may not know coming your way. So just stop, recognize it, understand where you want, and go back to basics. I tell my clients, go back to basic. What is my intention for the week? We learned that, at a very young age.
Yes.
What's my week like? Go back, stop. What is important to do? Look at your calendar. And if it's full, if it's complicated, I get it. I respect that. What can I stop doing on that day? What is that block of time that I'm going to start getting into my calendar that is non-negotiable? Because I work with clients, Roxanne, and sometimes they block it and someone intervenes into that calendar. Well, that's boundaries. That we have to respect our boundaries and recognize everyone that this is an untouchable period. I need to work on my strategy. Call it a fancy name, strategic planning. Planning to whatever you want, but keep that block for you to be a better manager.
Absolutely. And it's so very important, right? Like that if you're at the level that you're at, you're at that level for a reason, and you need to protect that mental capacity even more so that when you've kind of, like you said, set your intention, understand what you need to get off your plate that day or that week, and then to figure out what were your process goals like in that day, and not always looking at outcome, to your point, but what steps did I take to get to my intention that day? And did I take the steps in that right direction? Well, good for you. Give yourself a pat on the back, figure out where you need to be tomorrow, and a bit at a time, but also inflecting through your day, like you've said, little things. And I often say to people, do little things like, and I think we've talked a little bit about that, have the visual right there, have the scent around your clothes, have the favorite teas or whatever, or just little things, have pictures of your children, or maybe your favorite vacation, because we haven't been able to get off on vacation. What are those things that bring you back to the moment and to help you recognize what you're doing? So again, by putting on that logical part of the brain, it brings you back to the present moment, versus kind of projecting about what I didn't get done today, and how I, like, to your point, what am I telling myself that makes me feel like I can achieve?
Absolutely. Look, my motto is, in my company's, my market's motto is changing the way people think or leaders think, one conversation at a time. Just start with one conversation with yourself. I've seen the best intentions in organization creating the most toxic environments. Just because something sounds good on paper, it doesn't mean that it's not suppressing your talent, right? So look at what you're doing on a daily basis. And if you want to waste potential, put people in situations where they spend their energy surviving instead of really engaging their intelligence in building a strong culture that sustains and runs on a united purpose. What a waste. I've seen this again and again, that fear of being in a survival mode that makes you lose the best of your employees. So stop and go back to what is really my job, and how can I look at my high potentials and make sure they are not on survival mode, that they're truly on creating that amazing place where results can happen. So if you notice a lot of resistance in your team, if you're noticing a lot of silence in your team, if you're noticing significant amount of distraction in your team, stop and go back to what have we done to suppress or censor, make these people feel, that lack of trust toward us. Never underestimate the power of silence in organizations.
I know a lot of people think silence means like everything's going well. Well, then I often go, oh, no. There's that undercurrent, right? And sometimes, I had a colleague and I was speaking to him and he was on a senior team and his CEO brought in the person to do the 360 and give them recommendations and all those things. And everybody on the team filled it out, but they were all afraid to say what the truth was. Right. And in turn, there was almost 50% of the team that was going off on leave. So that's telling you,
yes,
right there, right? Like your metrics are right there in front of you. If people are telling you they more incidental absences, maybe short-term leaves, all those things, your metrics around you is showing you that something is wrong. So for you,
absolutely,
you'd have to be completely unaware to recognize there's limbs and people dropping off around me. What's the story to your leadership at that point? And I think it means you're going to get some hits as a leader, right? That says you got to do a lot of things different. But if you can't sustain that capacity to make change, how is it that you could expect the other people around you to do the same?
Absolutely. No matter what conflict, no matter what difficulty, I tell my clients, you and your team are much more than your survival skills. Go back and look at it. I find three types of things happening, Roxanne, when things are not right and you know it. Some people escape, they're leaving and you're like, what? They left? They're leaving? They don't even tell you anything. Some revolt, right? You see these courageous acts of rebellion happening. Or courageous person saying something at a town hall that is absolutely unexpected. And then the others hide. They wear these beautiful masks and they mask this silence and walk just barely making it to make ends meet, that just to survive. So they're hiding. So they're not next on your list. So we sneak in different forms and we react in different form. And I would say, you can only demand obedience for so much from your team. Retaliation will eventually sneak in different forms. So I'm pausing again, going back to what we started, Roxanne, pausing, really understanding, the impact of what you're doing, intentionally communicating. For some reason, I see many of the organizations where I'm called to look at, what's happening with their teams. There's no communication, or there's over communication. When it's over communication is meaningless and it's not truly transparent. When there's no communication, it's lost, right? You have a lost path, but still no communication. So how can I create a balance and share consistent communication that is meaningful, transparent, and also authentic? Right. So the three together, because we know when you're lying. I've worked in organizations for more than 20 years. Now I work out of organizations and consult with them. We know when you're lying. People know what's happening. I worked in an organization that was super organic, Roxanne, but my administrative assistant knew all the gossip way before it got to the directors and leaders. People know what's happening and they talk. There's channels of communication. So consistent communication is so important, right? And placing ourselves in a place of vulnerability starts with really looking at ourselves.
Right. And, and I think, unfortunately, in business, we put these leaders sometimes at a disservice. We give them, because they have capacity for outcome. And, the business schools, I think, are recognizing that, gone are the days where vulnerability is viewed as weakness. It is really strength, because what it allows others to do is to say, hey, Loubna's normal. She's experiencing this or that. And she's letting us know. And wow, if she's feeling like that, I'm on her team, is it not possible that I can also share and get, be able to get some support? So I think the transparency, like you said, the authenticity and the vulnerability of your leadership skill and capacity gives people permission to say, we're all in this together. And, I want to work for a leader that I feel like I can relate to.
Absolutely. Especially at immense times of change. That vulnerability takes on totally, it opens up totally new possibilities, right? Because then you leverage your strength and challenges with those of others, and you find complementary competencies to help you and assist you become even more effective.
Well, Loubna, this has been an amazing conversation. I knew we would have lots to talk about. So for anybody now, Loubna's, been doing this kind of work for a long time. For any organizations or leaders that are maybe potentially looking for executive coaching, where can people reach you to have a chat or to be able to use you for some of your skills?
Absolutely. It's my first name, Loubna, Loubna, at mindmarket.org. Or you can visit the website. I think it's going to be there, www.mindmarket.org. I look forward to talking to you, and I really wish you all the best in your journey of leadership. And Roxanne, thank you so much for your time. I'm so looking forward to your book and reading your book. And I thank you for this time. I can't believe the hour passed. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And Loubna is also writing a book, and when she finishes it, she's going to come back and visit, no doubt, to share it with us. So again, go out there, take care of yourself first, so that you can. It's simple, but it's not easy. And yes, you have a lot of expectations of you, and in a time that's been dire for most. But recognize that the more you're capable of going into your internal space, you're able to then catch your cognitions, your emotions, and get connected to your body. That creates the platform to allow you to go out there and lead from such a place of strength. So again, Loubna, thanks so much. For everybody, if you're wanting more information on authentic leadership with your teams, you can reach out to me at roxannederhodge.com.
Thanks for tuning in to Authentic Living with Roxanne, creating the space for positive, healthy change. Roxanne is a keynote speaker, psychotherapist, and coach. To work with Roxanne, visit roxannederhodge.com/blueprint. We'll see you next time on Authentic Living with Roxanne.